this is Joyce Polino Crane. I'm the news director at WestfordCAT, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing the town's new police chief, Mark Chambers. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. You're really not a newbie. You've been in town. You've been working at the Westford Police Department for 22 years, I heard you say.
Correct. Yeah, I started here in February of 2000. I worked in Groton for a couple of years before I came over here. But the goal was, I grew up in Westford, so the goal was always to come back to Westford and work as a police officer. So back then, these jobs are very competitive. So trying to get a police job, it was you got your foot in the door wherever you could, whether it was in dispatch or another town, and then just hoped for an opportunity to be able to go to. Well, for me, it was hoping to go to be able to get a chance to come back to Westford and work, and I was fortunate enough that it came up.
So was it a police officer's position or?
Yes, I came over as a patrol officer. I was working as a patrol officer in Groton, and an opening happened in Westford, and at the time it was Chief Welch was the chief. So 2 chiefs ago, he actually he knew my reputation. He knew I was trying to excuse me, come back to Westford to work, and he had a member of the department that I was friendly with reach out and ask if I was interested, and I was able to put in for the position and interview for it, and I got it. So I was very, very lucky.
You were, especially to be able to return to your hometown. That's
yes,
a dream a lot of people have. So you moved up in the ranks then. You started off in Westford as an officer, and then
I did.
Can you give us a little bit of that path?
Yeah, so when I first came over, I was an overnight patrolman I didn't work overnights for too long, and then I was lucky enough to move to the 3 to 11 shift, which is the busiest shift, and you get a lot of experience, a lot of traffic, a lot of people around, so a lot of interactions. In 2003, I was promoted. Well, it's not a promotion, but I was moved into our detective bureau and worked in detectives for about 4 years. And when I was able to make sergeant, I made sergeant in 2007, made lieutenant in 2011. I had a short stay at lieutenant. Nothing like going back to overnights when you're in your 30s and have children to motivate you to really study and kind of put your nose to the grindstone. And I was fortunate enough to make captain in 2013. So I've been incredibly fortunate, and I have been able to really focus on my career and serving this community for a long time. I'm very, very lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you did you grow up knowing you wanted to be a police officer or a member of the public safety?
You know, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I had friends that one of whom works here. He was a very, very close friend. We've known each other since we were about 4 years old, and ever since I've known him, he's wanted to be a police officer. I always knew I wanted to do something within this community growing up. I just didn't know what it was. And although my grandfather was a police officer in Maynard for about 10, 12 years, I believe, back in the 50s.
Where did he serve? Where was that?
In Maynard, over in Maynard, so pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I've always kind of gravitated towards team. I grew up playing team sports, and I always tried to be a leader on the teams that I was always in. And I don't know, I just always have felt this. I really don't know how to describe it, but I've just always taken a leadership role, and I always just try to keep things on track. I didn't know how I was going to apply that when I got older, and it was kind of a combination of my grandfather's history and being aware of it, and my friend Dennis's drive to be a police officer when we were growing up, that started to get exposed to it a little more. And as Dennis started to work part-time in Westford when he was 19, 20 years old, when you could do that stuff, he was an auxiliary officer. He started to tell me about some of the things that the Westford Police Department was doing. And once I heard that, I was at UMass Lowell at that point. I was a history major, and I didn't know what I was going to do with a history major, but I switched to criminal justice because they have an excellent program over there. And I started to know more about becoming a police officer, and I knew pretty shortly thereafter that this was something that I was going to do, and I haven't looked back. So thank you, Dennis.
That's wonderful. That was you've answered all my questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I have two more. But wait, there's more.
Yeah. Well, not everybody knows that story, so now everybody will that watches this.
Yeah, I really actually I'm so glad that you're being this open, because I think it's so important for the community to know the chief, the police chief, and what his philosophies are. And let's move on to the policies so that we get that in. I know you had someone post your department's policies online, and I think if people are interested in looking at those, they're at westfordcatnews.org, and also on the Facebook page of the Westford Police Department.
They are. So with the social justice reform and the killing of George Floyd over the summer, we heard from the community what they wanted from us. And we wanted to make sure that we provided as much information as we possibly could, because we wanted to answer the questions. We didn't want our community not knowing how we approach things, or what type of training we've given our officers, or what our policies and procedures were. So we tried to provide as much information as we could. Some of that information has been revised. We've even created new policies to address some of the community concerns of how we respond to calls. With the new Police Reform Act here in Massachusetts, our policies are going to continue to evolve too, because as more conflicts and issues are raised, we want to make sure that we're addressing them, and that the community knows that we're aware of it, and we're actively trying to address it. So that was kind of the motivation behind putting all that information up. Most police departments don't share their use of force policy.
Oh, they don't?
No, they don't. It's available, but they wouldn't put it out. But that's something that we felt was very important, was to get that information out there. We did revise it almost immediately to include no chokeholds. Now with we had always kind of had it in there. Chokeholds are not taught in the state of Massachusetts. So every full-time permanent police officer undergoes the training curriculum that's approved by the state. And under the use of force curriculum here in Massachusetts, chokeholds aren't taught. And we wanted to make sure that that was accurately reflected in our policy. So we did update it at that point. When the new Police Reform Act came out, chokeholds are no longer allowed in any situation. We had updated our policy to say that you could only use a chokehold if it was a lethal situation where the officer's life or someone else's life was in danger. And the state has since banned chokeholds altogether. So we have had to update our policy again. There's also some other change in language that's come out for use of force. But I know that's kind of a long-winded example, but my background is in, when we were talking about my kind of career progression within that, was I became a defensive tactics, use of force, and firearms instructor in 2003 or 2002, sorry. And I've maintained all my certifications, even as a deputy chief and as a chief, because I think that use of force and how it's approached within the community, how it's reported within the community, and how the officers continue their training and be exposed to this stuff, I think is incredibly important. Because when you have officers that aren't properly trained, you're going to get an inappropriate response. So we've been fortunate here where we've had really good training. This isn't because of me, but because our other instructors maintain all of their certifications, and they're up to date. They're very current. One of them serves on our NEMLEC, Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Collaboration. He's on their SWAT team, Special Weapons and Tactics. So he's very up to date on all the firearms laws, all the firearms training, He knows what's appropriate at our patrol level. And our canine officer is our lead defensive tactics, which is police hand-to-hand self-defense. And he's been teaching since he shortly came on, 2008, Detective Pelledu. So we're very fortunate that we have high-level trainers that can come into that work with our officers. They pull our officers off the street, on occasion, and we do have an indoor range, so we go through use of force scenarios. So those types of trainings, I think, are very important, because those are the ones that are going to destroy the trust of the police department if we use force inappropriately, on top of a lot of the other social justice reforms. So those are kind of the two tiers that we're really trying to enhance the training opportunities for our officers right now.
It seems like a tightrope walk for police officers in general, or police departments.
It is. So, you're walking into a situation and you're being asked to make a split-second decision based upon what you're encountering. Mm-hmm. So, and based upon the information that you get going into the situation, sometimes you have a little bit more time to plan, other times you do not. Like domestic violence situations are one of the most volatile situations that a police officer is going to face, because you're walking into an already dangerous situation, whether it's just a verbal domestic or a physical domestic or not. Those types of events can swing with just a comment. And we need to make sure that our officers are going to be able to respond appropriately within that split second. So it is very difficult. Sometimes we don't always have the information that 2020 hindsight provides. So that's why it's important to get all that information out there beforehand, so the community has at least a little bit of faith and trust that we're doing our best, that we're trying to address the issues that are concerning to them, so we have the best chance of success moving forward in any situation. So it is a tightrope. It is a tightrope, but I think a lot of the officers are training goes a long way to kind of help them walk that tightrope.
Mm-hmm. You have amazing communication skills.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know it seems to me that was a huge element in the town, the select board, and the town manager choosing you as the chief. Did you get any feedback like that? Have you gotten feedback about your skill level?
And people have commented on it. I think it's kind of funny, because as a police officer, especially doing things like this, where you're either doing things in the public eye or with media, it's very uncomfortable, even for me. And I've had to do it. But again, this is one of those things, though, Joyce, where I've been kind of fortunate, where I wasn't given a choice in a lot of these things, where it was, when I made captain, I was the representative to the Board of Selectmen. So I was the liaison between the police department and the board. I was kind of thrust out into the public eye, and I didn't have a choice in it. I never really thought about being on camera. It was just, I was over there doing my responses. But again, when I say that I was fortunate, it was my years of the background that I had of teaching in front of 120 students at a police academy made me a little bit more comfortable with that role. And it's still hard for me, but it's part of the job. But part of it also is, like, one of the things that was kind of explained to me when I first became a police officer, when I was 1998 and I was young and impressionable. One of the senior officers had said, it's almost like you're an actor. You're putting on a role, and you're going to be forced to do things that you're not usually comfortable with. Putting your hands on somebody and being physical, it's either you can do it or you can't. We can train you to the levels, but certain people are just better at it. Just like certain people are so shy, they wouldn't be able to communicate very well if they're in front of a bunch of people. And the only way to get better at those things is to continue to practice it. I'm just one of those lucky ones that I didn't have a choice. I kind of had to learn how to do this.
But you
I just talk. I talk a lot, I
you
guess.
definitely rose to the occasion.
Oh, thank you. And part of it is I want to get the information out there because I want people to be comfortable with the police department. I want people to be comfortable with the officers that work here. A majority of our officers did grow up in Westford. They have a connection. They have the personal connection. They want to make the people of this town proud because they have a lot of relationships within this community. And there's nothing worse than, going to a cookout with some of your friends that you grew up with here and you're hearing all these horror stories about the other officers, or, heaven forbid that if, one of my officers pulled somebody over and was in a bad mood and was rude, but that person knows somebody who knows somebody. And now that story gets back to him, like, I got pulled over by this Westford cop. You're such a jerk to me. And it turns out to be them. So that's one of the benefits of having a lot of kids that grew up in town. And we just have there's a lot of relationships and everybody is very cognizant of their position within the town. And I think that is one of the benefits of having, local kids.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, and I keep on talking, but we have like five current employees that were Westford Academy graduates that as seniors, they did their senior capstone experience with the police department. They came in and they did ride-alongs for about 5 weeks. So like James Antonelli, Brett Fitzgerald, just like we've had quite a few that have transitioned to become Westford police officers after they went to college for 4 years and got their degrees. They came in and they started working with us. So we've been very, very lucky. We've had a nice relationship with WA. And again, that's just the benefit of having kind of the local connections.
And just to clarify, when you mentioned James Antonelli or Jim Antonelli, that is the
Junior, sorry.
principal.
Yes, yeah, that's Junior,
Principal.
who I've known since he was about 5. I didn't hire him. I was, Chief McEnany did hire him. Excellent kid. But we've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of really good, intelligent, well-rounded applicants over the past couple of years that have. It's almost like an extra connection to the town. They're following in their parents' footsteps. Brett Fitzgerald and Justin Belinsky are 2 of our other officers, and their father works as I think he's the electrical. He works with the building department, so he does the electrical permitting and inspections. So I think we've been fortunate where we have these kids that are growing up in town and they're seeing what their parents have experienced, the great management, the great residents, and just their position within the community and the relationships that they've been able to build, and they wanted to give back, and we're lucky enough to get them at the police department. So
yeah, that's just the greatest tribute to a parent, I believe. I sure would have loved it if my sons had followed in my footsteps, but they had other plans.
Yeah, I don't think either of my children will become a police officer either, but yeah, I do agree. At least if they're taking the service aspect of it, it doesn't have to follow in the exact same footsteps. But I'm sure that I know that Jim Antonelli Sr. is proud of his son, just from personal conversations I've had with him. So again, we've been very fortunate here to be able to get the quality candidates and quality officers that we have.
Yeah. I don't know when we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to move on a little bit. What do I want to ask you? Well, we've talked about training policies, and the education is the police academy, I assume, right? That's where he gets trained.
Yes, yeah, I think it's 980 hours that the police academy goes for, but we do have ongoing training here at the Westford PD, and also mandated state training that we also do. We do try to take advantage of as many training opportunities as we can, particularly, with the hot button topics. We want to make sure that we're addressing some of the training issues. Implicit bias is one of the trainings that we sent. I think we're at about 85% of our police department has gone to additional implicit bias training. The next step for us is going to be doing critical incident training, which is through the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, and SAMHSA, where we're going to try and get at least 20% of our police department trained as critical incident response officers. So, and what that is 40 hours of additional training on mental health recognition, awareness, and different tools and techniques that can be used based upon how or what the mental health crisis is. So, you know, if we respond to somebody with a mental health crisis, these officers with the additional training should be able to identify kind of the underlying cause of the mental health crisis, whether it's, you know, the person may have autism or dementia or bipolar disorder, or, you know, recognizing some of the cues and clues that come with those types of disorders and matching it with an appropriate response. So that's part of where we're heading as well. So those are two very big training opportunities that we're trying to take advantage of right now.
Oh, so, and on the lighter side, do you have a hobby?
Yes, actually, you probably can't see it, but there's a picture right up there. So I like to fly fish. Growing up, my brother got into it because of his future father-in-law, and he kind of dragged me along. So as I've always fished since I was about 6 years old. I like to bass fish, and now it's fly fishing. We travel. We go to New York for a week every late fall, and go to the Salmon River to steelhead fish. A couple of my friends do come with us, so it's usually a big family event. There's about 14 or 15 of us that go out. So yeah, playing sports, and you know, my biggest hobby right now, though, is probably just watching my kids. You know, they're both very, very athletic, and they both play multiple sports, and you know, and they're I get a lot of enjoyment just kind of sitting on the sidelines and watching them and seeing them grow and become leaders on their own, you know, in their own right, and kind of get all the benefits of a team sport. You know, learn how to build relationships, learn how to become a better leader, or even, no, not everybody has to be a leader, just a better follower. About, you know, finding their place within these teams, and just kind of growing as individuals. It's, you know, that's been very rewarding for me as they've gotten older. So those are my hobbies.
Well, those are good ones, because, you know, it goes oh too fast. You know.
Yeah, we're starting to realize that.
Yeah.
You know, only a couple more years.
Wow. Oh, so you have high schoolers then, high school.
Yes. Yeah.
Good years.
We've enjoyed it so far.
So that's about it for me at this point. I would like, there are a couple of things you mentioned, and I think I'd love to extend an invitation to the members of your department that if they want to come on WestfordCAT and, you know, to go into anything that, you know, needs clarification, that's what we do. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I'd love to have an open line of communication, Joyce. And if you ever need anything from this end, just please let me know. And if it's within our ability to help you out with or provide some information, we'd be more than happy to do it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I will take you up on that. I'm sure there's always something coming in the future, some random event that will involve you and probably need reporting. So,
well, I'll do my best to stay out in front of things too. So,
yeah. So my final question is, what do you want Wakefield, not Wakefield, I lived there many years ago. What do you want Westford residents to know?
Yeah, so I saw that in your kind of preamble, like when we were exchanging emails. I want Westford to just know that our guys are always they're always trying to do their best. So when we have the missteps, whether an officer's having a bad day, please just consider we're doing our best. And if we're aware of an issue, a problem, anything that we can do to change in policy, if it's systemic or if it's just a one-off, we're going to do it. This is a profession. It's a profession that all of our guys take seriously. And we want to make sure that our residents know we are doing the best that we can. We will continue to learn, we'll continue to develop, and we will continue to assess ourselves to provide the best service that we can to this community. And it's a partnership. we need the community members to let us know if we've failed or if we're failing. We need to know that so we can address it. We can't do this in a bubble, and we can't do it by ourselves. So it was actually, as I was reviewing information for our chief's assessment center, there's a school of policing. There's a guy, Sir Robert Peel. He's considered the father of modern policing. One of the basic principles that has always been put forward on the policing is the police of the public and the public of the police, and it just reinforces that it's a relationship that has to be maintained. The public has to have confidence in the police, and the police have to know that the public is going to also support them. So it's just making sure that we strike that balance. And I think that we're doing a pretty good job of it here in Westford. But if we're not, I need to know.
Yeah, good point. I know I said that was the last question, but I did forget to ask you one that may be helpful for you. But what are your department needs? I know Chief McEnany used to, when he would request, or discuss budget, he always needed that one more police officer because the town was growing. What do you see as the departmental needs?
Yeah, so I certainly will echo what Chief McEnany had said. I think we did that staffing study back in 2017-18 that it showed because of the call volume and where we were trending and everything, we could use a few more. So where we're at right now is we have 49 positions. I would like to get us to 50. So one more officer. And I think that as our staffing has kind of filled in, we've been able to have a little bit more community engagement. This year, we've been able to have our mountain bike officers out a little bit more than we have in the past. We've been trying to get them up into the quarry because the quarry has historically been a very difficult area for us to patrol properly. So we've been able to do some directed patrols up there. We've been able to do some directed patrols down the East Boston camps. There's a lot more activity down at East Boston camps and the beaches down there than there had been traditionally. So we're trying to do that. And then with the new art installations over on the rail trail, we're trying to make sure we get out there a little bit more too. So I think that once we have our full complement, even if we're budgeted for 50, the chances of us ever reaching 50 and maintaining that for a significant period of time is pretty slim. So I think that where we're at right now, and if we can get that one extra officer, we're going to be able to do a lot more community service style events because we're going to have the staffing scheduled and available to be able to do a lot more of these things. Because if we have the extra personnel that aren't constantly shagging calls, we're able to do kind of these directed events where the officer's not necessarily a slave to the radio, where they're having your ear to the radio all the time. It's difficult to be able to get out of the police car and go for a walk and just have casual conversations when you're always listening. I think our guys do a pretty good job of it, but we can do better. And I think that we're starting to get there. And then other than that, this town we have a very good budget. We manage it very well. We kind of shoestring a lot of things, but I don't necessarily know that we need a lot more. I think that we can do more. I just don't know that we need more in that fashion. And the only other thing that we would ask from the community is just continue to give us your trust. I think we're trying to build a lot of that back up, and just know that we're doing our best. And if we can get a little bit of a benefit of the doubt occasionally, that will go a long way.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Chief Chambers, how does that sound?
It's weird. I'll be the first one to tell you. It doesn't exactly. I guess it does. You get the two CHs, I guess, but yeah, the first time it was official, it kind of made me blush. I was just like, nope, it's just weird. We'll get used to it, I hope.
You will. So Chief Chambers, thank you so much for letting me speak with you today. and for setting some of the policies out for the town to know about. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Joyce. I really appreciate the opportunity. And again, like, if anybody has any issues, my direct contact is available on our town website, on the police department website. So if anybody has any questions, it is policechief@westfordma.gov. That does get sent to me, as well as complaints can also go through there. There is a contact the police chief section that they can fill out, which you're aware of, and that does go directly to me. So it's not some man behind the mask or behind the computer. I actually get those, I see those, and I try to respond in a timely manner. So and if I can't get to it, my deputy does. And Joyce, if I may, if I can take this opportunity to just thank the community for the trust that they've placed in the police department, as well as I want to thank my department and the police department here and the staff that we have for continuing to work throughout the pandemic, throughout the social justice reform. We've been able to recover really well here. Morale is very good, and we have an excellent police department, excellent guys, and we're just all hoping to be able to continue to serve this community.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Joyce. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Same here, Mark.
Okay.
For WestfordCAT News, this is Joyce Polino Crane.